And so the benefit of empathy is that you can take your habitual patterns and start transforming those, changing those.
Yeah, and I think empathy can really change it on a deep level for people. But also just knowing the tools will help you begin to change those habitual patterns. I mean, getting the empathy is great. It is a step in that direction, but also doing it differently, kind of growing that muscle to take a different pathway than you're used to taking. You know, even just shutting up where you're used to yelling, maybe if you're triggered, to be quiet. That'll begin to transform that habit.
So what type of habits you can have, like empathic habits? So it's not, you're not wanting to transform the empathic habits, right? You're wanting to transform the habits of maybe fear or anxiety or other things that that set you off.
Yeah, all sorts of habits, addictions, and all sorts of ways of coping with life can be transformed. Of course, you don't want to transform empathic habits because they're probably not habits. They're probably something that you've developed over your journey in self-growth and recovery. So those are the patterns that you want to reinforce, because as you reinforce the patterns of empathy, you're going to be building neuro connections that will support you in your life and the outcomes that you want to manifest in your life, versus these old habitual patterns that you've had to learn as a child through trauma and suffering. They kind of repeat certain patterns that lead you to the same outcome. So I call that being on the hamster wheel. So by repeating your habitual patterns over and over again, you don't know how to get off that hamster wheel. You just go around and around and around. You repeat the same behaviors, repeat the same feelings happen, and the outcome of your life is the same. So if you want to change the outcome of your life, you need to start working with those habitual patterns and changing those. And language is such a powerful tool because that's how we're socialized, through language. So to kind of socialize ourselves, repattern ourselves, it's very useful to have a language tool to do that with. And that's why nonviolent communication is so useful, because it gives us a tool where we can actually repattern ourselves.
Okay, so what I was saying there is that people create these patterns in their lives, and you keep kind of going through the same pattern. And if you're wanting to change the pattern, that you need some tools to do that, and that like nonviolent communication or compassionate communication has some tools that are verbal tools that can help repattern yourself.
Yeah, and there may be other ways to do it too. Those are the ways that I'm most familiar with. Other tools like meditation is a great help, and some other practices are very helpful. There are many paths to the mountaintop. So nonviolent communication is a path that I appreciate because I can use it in every single interaction. I can use it with myself. I can use it with other people. So I've been able to use that to change my consciousness over the years.
And that there's multiple tools that you can use to change those habits. And for you, it's been nonviolent communication as a tool that you found very helpful for changing your own habits. Then
probably the most helpful, although I do meditate every day also. And I believe the meditation balances my brain. So I've become more and more at peace over the years by doing the combination of things.
And how is the empathy related to that in terms of nonviolent communication? And like, where's the empathy in that? Is it that these are all tools that are fostering and creating more empathy? Is that?
Well, nonviolent communications tools are empathy and honesty. So each one of those tools has a whole paradigm of processes surrounding it. So empathy is only part of the game. The other part is honesty. How do you express your honesty? Now, I had a really hard time with my honesty. I was much better at listening to others, but I didn't really know how to express my truth in a way that could be heard. in a way that could receive a non-defensive reaction from somebody else. And there was a lot of fear that I had in expressing my honesty. So using the nonviolent communication tool helped me to do that differently. And I had a client who also, he had a very hard time expressing his honesty, and he and his wife were in a lot of turmoil. Well, it took him 2 or 3 years to really begin to express his needs to his wife. But as soon as he began to be honest about what he wanted, the relationship totally turned around, and she fell madly in love with him, whereas before she hated him and she was in contempt of him. She needed that power. She needed him to express his own power for her to respect him. So that's kind of what I was working on. How do I express my own power in a peaceful way? I can do it in a demanding way. I can do it in a judgmental way, but I didn't know how to do it in a way that would likely get my needs met.
So in this case, it's that you had a pattern in yourself that you weren't being honest, sharing what was really your deeper needs were, as well as this other person that you worked with. And so you're using these processes to change the pattern, or you're using the empathy to change the pattern of not being honest about really what's going on for you.
Yeah, actually for me, as I think about it, I had some honesty, and people used to accuse me of being very blunt. And then they would have defensive reactions to my bluntness, which is my honesty probably came out in terms of judgments, you know. Mm-hmm. So people, don't like to be judged, and it would create a defensive reaction in them. So I had to learn how to express myself differently, and nonviolent communication helped me do that.
Well, one thing I'm just thinking is, in terms of expressing yourself, I had a situation where, like, I have something I want to say, and I kind of hold off saying it, and it kind of builds and builds and builds. And then when I finally get it out, it kind of like blurts out, and it's like too much for you. But it's like, where's this all coming from? So those are kind of like a pattern.
Yes.
That, it's like, how do you, change that pattern to be, I don't know, something. It's got to be more, I guess, more honest, in the sense that it's a deeper degree of honesty of maybe sharing, I'm holding this back, and really wanting to get it out, or something like that, kind of.
Yeah, I think it's about expressing as you go along too, not letting it build up until it explodes. And that's very good for your health and well-being too, because every emotion in you is a biochemical reality. So if you're pushing your emotions down, which many people do in our culture, it's going to come out somewhere, either physically or some way it's going to be known. So I think it's much better for your health to just express those feelings as you go along, to be aware of what your needs are, to figure out strategies to get those needs met, to find people that you can call for empathy when you need empathy. Instead of letting all that stuff build up year after year until it finally explodes and it creates a big mess.